Discover the incredible calm of a waitress during a robbery. A millionaire's touching revelation. Emma's hands trembled slightly as she poured coffee into the chipped ceramic mugs. Her fingers knew the routine well, guided by years of familiarity. Yet tonight was different. An unsettling electricity hung in the air. Outside, storm clouds brewed heavy over the small Midwestern town, casting shadows over her usual haven, the diner. Regulars gathered, voices mingling with laughter, but even amidst this warmth, a bone-deep weariness gnawed at Emma. Each day was a dance between her job and the slow, creeping fog consuming her father's mind. Suddenly, the bell above the door jangled violently, slicing through the comfortable hum of the diner. Emma turned, catching sight of a figure cloaked in a too-big hoodie, eyes wild, a gun shaking in his grasp. Fear erupted like a firework. Diners dove beneath tables, chairs scraped against the floor, and Emma's heart raced except she didn't move. Something in her couldn't let go of the connection she felt to the trembling man. He was not just a threat. Somewhere behind that desperation lay a story, perhaps a struggle she could empathize with. As her breath hitched, she remembered the nights caring for her father, each moment challenging her sense of normalcy. Did she have the courage to step toward the chaos, to confront her own fears? Emma approached, grounding herself in the weight of her own reality, the comedic chaos of juggling orders, while grappling with an uncertain future for her father. "Please," she spoke softly, words falling like whispers in the storm. "I don't want to hurt you. Are you okay?" Jack, a businessman, sat frozen in his booth. He came to the diner for its simplicity, a break from his pristine life. Yet he never imagined he would witness such raw humanity unfolding in front of him. While his wealth had always shielded him from the grittiness of life, this moment ripped through the facade. Emma embodied resilience, sparkling against the dingy backdrop of the diner. And for the first time, he questioned his own values. Was all his success merely noise in the face of real struggle? The robber stiffened slightly, Emma's concern peeling away layers of his anguish, but chaos still loomed. Would he pull the trigger? Would she be a casualty of desperate decisions? Irregular breaths echoed in Emma's chest, the weight of despair pressing down on her shoulders as she thought of her father, the despair of losing him to the fog. And here he was, alive, needing her strength. Did she risk everything for a glimmer of hope or retreat into self-preservation? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. The atmosphere crackled as Emma held his gaze. The trembling man's finger twitched on the trigger, and then a flicker of understanding swept through his eyes. Jack clenched the edge of the table, caught between admiration and dread. This moment was on a knife's edge. Any movement could lead to disaster. Emma's words, a lifeline tossed amid stormy chaos, seemed to break through the frightening demand for fear, reminding them both of the fragile humanity that connected them in their struggles. Thunder echoed outside. So too did the sirens draw closer. She felt time stretching thin, the air pregnant with tension. The diner held its collective breath, teetering on the precipice of fate. Would Emma's act of courage dismantle the storm, or would silence fall tragically in its wake? Emma's heart raced, locked in a desperate struggle between fear and instinctive compassion. The robber's gaze flickered, confusion washing over his features as he processed the calmness in her voice. She could see the cracks in his resolve, the facade of danger masked by deeply seated anguish. How many times had she felt like that, trapped by circumstances beyond her control, screaming for relief? The sirens grew louder, and the reality of the situation pressed down on her. They were running out of time. "I know it's hard," she continued, her voice low, coaxing. but letting fear win isn't the answer. You don't have to do this. Every part of her screamed to stay alive, to retreat into the safety of the diner's scattering patrons. But this moment felt like a crucible, and she recognized there was a choice to be made. If she didn't confront the storm head-on, would that burden haunt her forever? This might be the first real moment in years where she could gain the strength to confront her own demons. The robber hesitated, disbelief flooding his eyes. That uncertainty was her opening. What if she could turn this man's desperation into an opportunity, a chance to glimpse a different life? One where kindness subdued wrath. "I'm Emma," she offered, extending her hand toward him. "I'm here. You're not alone." For a moment, silence enveloped them, the chaos of the diner fading into a muffled background. Jack knew he was witnessing something extraordinary. The juxtaposition of vulnerability and fear transformed into an unyielding strength. Emma's defiance against the odds was a revelation to him, but how could he translate that into action? Time seemed elastic, stretching and contracting, as everyone held their breath. The robber's finger, still unsteady on the trigger, seemed to drift lower, his gaze locking onto Emma's gentle persistence. "Why are you doing this?" Emma pressed gently. "What are you hoping to find on the other side of this?" Her question, simple yet profound, resonated deeply within him. In the shadows of his fraying spirit lay a history buried in despair, financial ruin, familial loss, hopeless nights. These were more than just circumstances. They were chains binding him. Emma's understanding cut through the fear, challenging him to confront the crumbling foundations of his resolve. "Help," he whispered, and the word hung heavy in the air, like an anchor amidst a raging tide. Jack realized the shift, the enormity of possibility unfolding. This was no longer a mere robbery. It had morphed into something far more significant, a pivotal moment where human connection might triumph over despair. Emma inspired courage not only in the robber, but within herself. In that instant, she found a flicker of her own latent strength. This moment was allowing her to step out from the suffocating fog of her father's decline and to embrace her own agency. But would she actually be able to make a difference? Just as hope ignited, the bell above the door swung open, and a squad of officers burst in. The cacophony of commanding voices shattered the fragile calm Emma had begun to cultivate. "Drop the weapon." She felt the atmosphere thicken, certainty slipping away. The tumult of conflicting emotions spiraled within her. Fear erupted anew, competing with a burgeoning sense of agency. Would they rush in with undue force, shattering the fragile peace she had fought to establish? The robber's panic returned, his eyes darting between Emma's unwavering stance and the officer's fierce, cleaving presence. Emma's heart dropped. The moment had not yet reached resolution. She had reached him, but outside forces could derail everything. "Please wait," she cried out, desperation seeping into her voice, her last appeal echoing in the rapidly collapsing tension. Would her leap of faith lead to chaos or redemption? It's the next few seconds that would change everything, and as breath stilled, victory seemed tantalizingly close, yet an arm's length away. Would Emma retain what she had uncovered within herself? Or would she find herself swept away in the tide of unfortunate decisions? Emma's breath hitched as she stood frozen, the culmination of her courage and instinct battling against the reality unraveling around her. The robber's eyes momentarily flickered with comprehension. Her voice cut through the chaos, resonating with the truth he so desperately needed. But the entrance of the officers twisted the atmosphere, injecting urgency and fear back into his trembling hands. "Listen to me," she implored, desperation threading through her words. "You're not alone. You're more than this moment. There is hope. Trust me." Time felt distorted, stretching impossibly as though it knew the stakes. Around them, the patrons remained still, all eyes drawn to the intense standoff. Emma could sense the collective trepidation. Some faces whispered fear and understanding in equal measure. She could feel her own thoughts racing, weaving through what she needed to do next. Would they back her? Would the officers stand down long enough for her to lead him out of the storm of his despair? The robber's gaze seeped into apprehension again, uncertainty igniting a flicker of recognition in his storm-darkened eyes. Emma saw the tempest within him battling surface fears. It mirrored her own internal fight, the chunks of her past that pulled her back, the insecurities that wrapped around her heart, paralyzing her ability to act decisively. The officer's voice broke through her thoughts, commanding yet sharp, a clear declaration meant to instill authority. "We're gonna need you to put your weapon down." With each second, the weight of decisions grew heavier, the realization sinking in that she was both an anchor and a catalyst. She thought of her father, his frailty consuming her as she had watched helplessly, just as she felt helpless now standing against the threat before her. Wouldn't she rather fight than see another life lost to despair? "Let them come close," she shouted amidst the escalating noise. "I'll take care of you. Just listen to me." For what felt like eons, her words hung between them raw, piercing the air with vulnerability. Emma felt new resolve surge within. It was in this very moment strength began to reshape her fear, stirring something within her that had long remained dormant, a determination she had known she possessed. The robber's hand visibly trembled. The gun was no longer an extension of his will, but the embodiment of his conflict. Emma caught a glimpse of his pain, a wounded spirit gasping for help. A realization struck her. He needed to see a way out beyond the gun and chaos. "Remember why you're here," she urged, her tone tender yet firm. "You want to help. I can help you. This doesn't have to end in destruction." Her words reached into the chaos like a lifeline. The robber's gaze faltered as the words pierced the barrier of his turmoil, his hardened posture beginning to waver. As the officers advanced more carefully, palpably alert to the shifting power dynamics, Emma commanded the situation with her very presence. Each breath they shared was a dance of precarious hope and vulnerability. She was discovering her own capacity to effect change, igniting a curiosity about the resilience of human bonds. Yet beneath that rising tide of strength, Emma sensed her heart racing toward an uncharted path. Enveloping fear clawed at her consciousness, whispering questions that surged forth. What if this fragile connection shattered the moment authorities intervened? What would happen when the storm outside collided with her newfound resolve? "Hold on," she said firmly, grounding herself in the moment as the space crackled with electricity, her next words poised to bridge two worlds. And in that charged air, something shifted irrevocably. She stood not just as a waitress in a diner, but as a potential savior in a moment of reckoning. Would the outcome ignite a transformation not just for the robber, but also the pieces of her own life that lay scattered in disarray? The next heartbeat held the promise of profound realization. Was she ready to confront her own fate head-on? The climax surged closer, and Emma's next move could make or break everything. How far would she go to protect this growth, to defend the courage that sparked in her soul? Emma's heart raced as she felt the weight of each passing second, the room thick with tension and fear. She could sense the officers' tension heightening, their unease mirroring her own. Yet, a quiet voice within reminded her of the initiative she'd taken the moment she had decided to stand up for something greater than herself. Perhaps this was her moment to showcase the growth she never truly understood she was capable of. "Please," she urged, directing her gaze solely at the robber now. "There's still a chance for you. Let's talk this through." Her brain wrestled with the magnitude of her own words. Never before had she engaged on such a raw and vulnerable level. This had become more than just decision-making. It was a reckoning with her deepest fears intertwined with an unexpected boldness. To her surprise, the robber's eyes softened slightly, but the glint of desperation was ever present. "What do you know about me?" he stammered, the tremors in his hands amplifying. "You think you can help me? I'm lost." His vulnerability shocked Emma. She recognized the essence of despair she had encountered in her own life, a reflection of the questions haunting her since her father's illness. "You're not lost," she said, yearning to lay bare his confusion. "You're standing at a crossroads, just like I am. I thought I was just a waitress, bound to serve others without purpose. But today, I realize I have more to give." "We both do." In that moment, the air shimmered thick with possibility. Emma could feel the urge within her to fiercely protect this newfound strength and identity, to push past the walls of her own self-doubt. When had she become more than just a spectator in her own life? The robber's eyes searched hers, as if he were grasping at a flicker of hope she had ignited within him. "But how? How can I change?" "By choosing life over fear," she replied, the words pouring from her mouth as though they were truths she'd held long before even recognizing their weight. "I've been paralyzed by fear for too long. You have the power to redefine this moment. Let us step beyond this chaos together." Each word acted like a seed, cracking through the hardened exterior he had wrapped around himself. Emma sensed a vital shift. The controlling narrative of violence seemed to soften. But beneath her resolve, uncertainty gnawed at her. What if he could not see beyond the immediate panic? The officers inched closer, cautious but armed with intent, their commands intermingling with her whispered affirmations. Emma felt the urgency of the moment heightening. She was skating along a thin edge. The tension was palpable, the stakes higher than she had ever envisioned. "Please," she implored, "trust me. Take a chance on us. Let this be not only an escape for yourself, but a beginning." He hesitated long enough for Emma to catch the subtle drop of the gun. A moment of genuine choice fluttered into the air, the possibility for both of their rebirths suspended at the precipice of a decision. Yet the officers were poised to break the fragile intimacy built between them. Emma's mind raced. She needed to anchor this pivotal experience not just for the robber, but also as a defining moment for her. How could she ensure that this was not a fleeting empowerment, but a solid foundation for her future? Just as the distance closing between the officers shifted the energy around them, the robber's eyes glimmered with a realization that could either solidify or shatter everything. "What if I'm too far gone?" he uttered, his voice thick with despair. She felt the gravity of his words, the resonance they held within her own history. "I thought the same thing," she whispered back, her vulnerability creating an unbreakable thread between them. "But we can redefine what gone means." As their sights locked, the space around them pulsed with the possibility of change, yet it teetered on the edge of chaos. Emma had tapped into something deeply transformative within, but would he make the leap? Would she embrace this newfound voice while risking everything she had built or ever hoped to build? Resources within her were uncoiling, stretching toward uncharted territories of resolve. The weight of being a simple waitress faded, replaced with the dawning realization that her life could become a testament to resilience. The moment crackled with anticipation, hanging unspooled and suspended in uncertainty, forever altering the course for two souls at a turning point. And just when she believed they could bridge the divide, a sudden shout echoed, jarring the tension. "Get down!" The command from an officer split the air, and Emma's hope wavered. Would she find the strength to protect this moment? Would she risk everything for the chance to ignite change within them both? Emma instinctively dropped to the ground as the officers rushed in, their urgency slicing through the charged atmosphere like a knife. The robber, caught in the crosshairs of panic and uncertainty, staggered, his grip on the gun faltering. In that instant, everything shifted dramatically. Emma's heart thudded painfully in her chest, but her mind raced, desperately devising a plan. She lay flat, her gaze flickering between the armed officers and the robber, who stood paralyzed as though caught in a storm. Emma's instincts kicked in. She urged herself to think clearly. She had breached darker abysses before her father's illness had taught her about the depths of despair and the flickers of hope nestled just beneath the surface. Suddenly, an idea sparked within her, ignited by the tenuous connection they had established. She whispered softly, hoping the robber would hear her amidst the chaos unfolding around them. "You can still change this. Please don't let fear win." Her voice quivered with an intensity she'd never known, overflowing with a mix of empathy and urgency. But officers surrounded the robber, drawing closer, weapons raised. Their shouts rang out, demanding his surrender. Emma could see the conflict tear across his features, a mixture of anger, fear, and the echo of despair she'd recognized in her own life. Time felt as though it were warping, pulsating with unspent energy. "Listen to me," she called again, awareness flooding over her as she attempted to penetrate the escalating fear in the room. "This isn't the end for you. It doesn't have to be." Facing him from the ground, she saw the glimmer of humanity he had for a fleeting moment pulled forth under her words. It flickered like a candle threatened by the wind. As the officers shouted more commands, the tension thickened, but so did her resolve. There was a power and vulnerability that she had never before tapped into, a sense of urgency that began to dictate her actions. Gunfire could erupt at any second, but her mind surged with an unexpected clarity derived from the deepest part of her experiences. The robber's eyes darted around the room, a storm raging between them. "What if I just want to be free?" he shouted finally, desperation welling up like a volcanic eruption brewing just beneath his surface. A profound wave of empathy washed over Emma as she realized they were more alike than different, both yearning for liberation from their own prisons. "Freedom isn't the answer when fear drives your actions," she insisted, the conviction in her voice rising with every word. "Real freedom comes from within. It's not too late for you to choose another path. You have that power." The atmosphere crackled, the officers now momentarily restrained by their own uncertainty over how to navigate the living, breathing battlefield unfolding before them. Emma saw a fractional change ripple across the robber's expression. For a fleeting second, it seemed as if he hesitated, weighing the gravity of her words against the tumult of the moment. In her heart, Emma began to understand that she wasn't just advocating for him, she was also unraveling the last vestiges of her own fear. Standing tall in vulnerability had become an unexpected act of bravery. Nonetheless, the threat of violence was still very real, and with it came the need for careful strategy. As she subtly maneuvered to inch closer to him, she considered the possibility of placing herself between the robber and the officers. Would that be enough to save both of them? Would she finally push past the boundaries of doubt she had clung to, the very boundaries that had defined her? "Just look at me," she implored, feeling a connection build again. "You could be someone you never thought you could be." In that moment, everything hung in suspension, the tension tightening around them like a noose. There were no promises of a happy ending lurking beyond this point. The future felt equally laden with uncertainty and potential. As he glanced at her, a flicker of recognition passed between them, but the officers were beginning to react, shifting their stances, hands steady on their weapons. Time was running out, and Emma held her breath, fully aware that the next decision would determine not only her fate, but the robberess as well. With a sudden realization, she understood just how far she was willing to go. "I won't let you go without a fight," she declared, her voice a rallying cry against the looming dread. And just as she readied herself to make her next move, the sound of footsteps echoed from behind. Someone was approaching. Would courage prove stronger than the collective dread? Would it be enough to forge a path through the darkness? Emma's pulse thundered through her temples as she braced for what might come next. The footsteps echoed closer, a jarring reminder that her time was slipping away. A turbulent wave of anxiety flooded her, yet beneath it lay an unexpected undercurrent of strength. This was her moment to forge a new narrative not just for the robber, but for herself. The sound of heavy boots halted near her. She could feel the shift in the atmosphere, as if all eyes were drawn toward whatever was unfolding behind her. The officers had become statues, momentarily frozen in their own uncertainty. Emma's heart raced with every breath, each inhalation igniting her determination. "Don't look back," she thought fiercely, reminding herself that the only thing that mattered was the connection she was forging with the man in front of her. The fear swamping him mirrored her own past, not about outward threats, but the insidious doubts that had plagued her for too long. She was standing on the precipice of change, but she needed to ensure he took the leap with her. "What would it take for you to see you have options?" Emma asked, her voice steady but urgent. He glanced at her, a flicker of recognition glimmering in his eyes, a battle between familiarity and revolt. "You don't understand," he barked, more a plea than an accusation. "You're not me. You've never lived this." Her breath caught in her throat, a sharp pin prick of realization slicing through her bravado. He was right. She didn't know his pain, but she had known her own. The relentless ache of watching her father succumb to illness had chipped away at her certainties. It had taught her that clarity could come from chaos, and that fear, while powerful, held no dominion over the mind when faced with the possibility of choice. "I don't have to be in your shoes to know what pain feels like," she insisted, her resolve solidifying like steel. "But I can tell you your past doesn't have to define you. You can rise above it. You're more than today's decisions. You're capable of so much more." That was the crux of it, her own internal dialogue resonating outside in the tumult of the world surrounding them. It was a beautiful paradox. She had stepped into a moment not just to advocate for his freedom, but to claim her own. Each word felt like armor, enveloping her in a newfound sense of conviction that had previously felt elusive. The footsteps behind her grew louder, the impending approach threatening to upend their tenuous connection. She took a breath, summoning her courage like an unspent reservoir. "You want freedom? Then fight for it. Fight against this pain, not against the world. Let me help you break the cycle together." His brow furrowed, contemplating her words. Emma's heart quickened at the dawning awareness in his eyes, a flicker of hope against the stark backdrop of despair. Yet, before she could gauge the shift in his decision, a decisive voice erupted from the entrance. "Hands in the air," demanded a newcomer. An officer had surged forward, gun leveled. Emma's instincts roared to life. She needed a bridge to connect the chaos of the moment. She positioned herself slightly in front of the robber, a shield of determination quaking against the rising tension. The space between them thickened with unspoken possibilities as she met the robber's gaze once more. "Trust me," she breathed, recognizing that this was the moment. The critical juncture that would define her. In that tightening silence, the weight of their choices hung precariously. Would he heed her call to freedom, or would fear pull them both into darkness? The danger wrapped around them, an electric tension that threatened to sever their fragile bond. And all at once, Emma understood the true fight lay not in the chaos, but in the courage to choose differently, both for herself and the man trapped in a cycle of destruction. The tug-of-war between fear and hope was palpable, and as decisions crystallized in that charged air, she felt the darkness beckon again. What would he choose? What would she dare to face? Emma's heart pounded, a raw drumbeat of anticipation. The tension in the air was almost unbearable, thickening around them as she faced the man whose life teetered at a perilous edge. She could see the flicker of fear in his eyes matched by something else, perhaps curiosity or the faintest trace of hope. It was a glimpse, a thread she could pull on tirelessly. "Do not flinch," Emma repeated internally, grounding herself in the present. She focused on the present urgency while drawing on her past. Her experiences, the painful moments of doubt and despair, molded her resolve. She was no longer the girl suffocated by uncertainty. She was a woman asserting her right to be seen and heard. The robber shifted, a tempest of conflicting emotions playing across his features. "Why would you care?" He shot back, his voice sharp yet layered with a vulnerability that cut deeper than any accusation. "Because I see you," she countered, the clarity of her voice surprising even herself. "And I refuse to let this moment define either of us." The boldness of her words reverberated between them, reinforcing a fragile connection. It was a chance not only for him, but a crucible for her own identity. Each heartbeat echoed her conviction masked behind his fear, Mirroring the darkness, she navigated through her own struggles. Behind her, the officer barked commands, but the urgency of the situation melted into an indistinct background murmur. Emma had walked through her own shadows, and now she stood firm, battling the demons not just for the robber, but for herself. This was no longer an encounter merely about the robbery. It was a revelation of resilience. "Tell me what brought you here," Emma pressed with gentle ferocity, willing him to peel back the layers. "What led you down this path?" His gaze faltered, and for a fleeting moment, she sensed the barrier fracture. "No one else believed in me. They just gave up," he murmured, vulnerability crackling in his voice. Emma felt her heart twist and expand at his admission, recognizing the haunting echoes of loneliness they both shared. "What if we start anew right now?" she proposed, every ounce of passion fueling her words. "You have the power to intertwine pain with purpose. I'm not asking you to let go of your past, just to realize it doesn't hold the keys to your future." The honesty in her proposal hung between them like the crisp winter air. There was danger in this openness, yet an invigorating energy pushed her onward. Behind her, the officer's shouts receded into the background noise, revealing the slow yet certain dawning of understanding in the robber's gaze. "I can't," he whispered hoarsely, an avalanche of vulnerability threatening to crash down as the dim light of hope flickered further in his eyes. "I've lost everything. What is left for me?" Emma steadied her breathing, aligning her emotions with her purpose. "Then let us build something anew from this chaos," she urged, unyielding. "You can transform your hurt into strength. Let us do this together." Just as he seemed ready to embrace her offer, the officer surged forward, guns still poised, breaking the stillness with demands for compliance. Their moment of potential hung in the balance, precarious yet pulsating with possibility. Fear gripped Emma's heart as she faced the imminent threat again, adrenaline rushing through her veins, but this time fueled by something greater clarity. "Now decide. Do you want to step towards light, or will fear snuff it out?" she called urgently, her voice resolute yet pleading into the cacophony. Would he take the chance? As she poised to confront the officer's approach, aware that the time for decisions was slipping away, it became painfully clear. The robbery was the least of her concerns now. Emma stood on the cusp of self-realization, struggling to navigate the storms of both her life and that of the man before her. In that moment, ineffable truth settled in her chest. Embracing fear and hope at once became a powerful paradox waiting to crystallize. Would the infinitesimal seconds stretch into an empowering choice, or would they fall victim to looming chaos over the flickering flame of liberation? "Trust is everything," she whispered to him, her heart awaiting an answer that felt far more consequential than a mere resolution to a robbery. The delicate threads of destiny weaved around them both, and Emma grasped for any sign that their hearts could bridge the chasm of despair. Then came a single response that might alter everything. The silence that followed the robber's hesitant response stretched like a taut wire, ready to snap under the weight of impending decisions. For an instant, every sound was an echo of their entwined fates, and Emma held her breath, feeling the tremors of fate ripple through the air. "All right," the robber finally breathed, each syllable heavy with trepidation. I'll try." His admission felt like a surge of electric energy in Emma's chest, igniting a fire born from vulnerability. She had initiated the dialogue that could alter the course of two lives. Yet this moment of commitment felt paradoxically monumental and delicate, as if they were stepping on glass. Emma's heart swelled with burgeoning hope and a dawning realization. This act of courage could be the catalyst for transformation not only for him, but for herself as well. "Good," she urged, her voice barely above a whisper, yet clung to the air like a promise. "Let us take this step together. No one is alone unless they choose to be." Behind her, the officer hesitated, eyes darting between the two distinct worlds unfolding in the dim light. It was a profound reminder of the threshold they both stood at, teetering on the edge of despair and renewal. The officer wanted control, stability. Emma was fighting for understanding, potential. Tension swirled, creating a magnetic pull towards resolution. Emma looked back at the man whose past had shackled him for too long. "What do you want from life?" she urged, her tone a blend of assertiveness and tenderness. "This is your moment to redefine yourself." He searched her gaze, a maelstrom of emotions boiling beneath the surface. "I want to be better," he confessed, voice cracking under the weight of sorrow. "I just don't know how. I'm scared." "Scared is okay," Emma replied, grounding her own uncertainty within him. "It means you're still human, still capable of change. Let us forge a path through that fear together." Emma's mind raced, her thoughts calcifying into a plan. She had learned that destiny was often decided by those willing to confront adversity. She needed to guide him, to articulate the steps toward a new beginning. This wasn't just an intervention. It was an invitation to growth. The robbery, the chaos, they were just the backdrop, a crucible forging their transformation. Then it hit her, a revelation stirring within the skills she had honed while working as a waitress, navigating difficult customers, reading emotions, drawing out stories. This was her moment to employ those abilities in the most critical way possible. It was an intersection of her life's experiences preparing her for this very instance. "Tell me about your dreams," she prompted gently. "What did you want to be before all this?" He hesitated, as if dragging something heavy from the depths of his past. "I wanted to be a mechanic. I loved working with my hands. Fixing things," he murmured, a flicker of pride sparking in his tone. "Then let us work from that," Emma exclaimed, feeling the rush of adrenaline from the reins of hope tightening firmly in her grasp. "Imagine a room filled with tools, the scent of oil and metal filling your lungs. You can learn and create. There's power in rebuilding." The officer shifted his stance, uncertainty etched on his face as he watched the exchange unfold, the dynamic of desperation transforming into resolve right before his eyes. He had come to manage chaos, but here was Emma, challenging the very notion of order through empathy. With each passing moment, the world around them faded into insignificance, their connection forging an unexpected allyship. Emma's conviction grew, holding the promise of redemption like a banner over their shared plight. For the first time, the robber's eyes sparkled with a hint of light. "Could I really become a mechanic?" he asked, half hopeful, half doubtful. Of course. Emma's enthusiasm was unfiltered now, a torrent of encouragement cascading freely. "But it will take work, dedication, and trust. You don't have to do this alone. I'll be here every step of the way. We'll create something worthwhile together." His head shook slowly, the initial resistance crashing against the tidal wave of possibility she had unleashed. Could he trust her? Could he allow himself to hope again? As he grappled with this radical concept, a distant siren blared in the background, breaking the cocoon of their intimate confrontation. The harsh realization of reality encroached once more, but Emma planted her feet firmly. "Focus on the moment. The chaos is outside, and we're here. A decision looms. Will you take the next step?" Suddenly, the gravity of this crossroads anchored heavily around them both. Would he embrace this unexpected chance? The question hung palpably in the air, poised to signal not just the resolution of a robbery, but the birth of a new path. Emma's heart raced, uncertainty still swirling, but belief unyielding. Was he ready to step toward transformation? "Decide," she urged again, her voice steady against the chaos. The world spun around them, and beneath the swirling storm, they both caught a glimpse of the dawning light, just waiting to be claimed. The robber's gaze lingered on Emma, a battle of disbelief and yearning playing out behind his eyes. The chaos beyond the barricaded entrance fell miles away, yet that tension coiled within him like a snake poised to strike, ready to reclaim its life. With a deep breath, he began to speak. "What if I fail? What if I try and I'm still me?" His vulnerability hung in the air, raw and potent, and in his eyes, Emma saw a familiar reflection. the fear of stagnation whispering sweet nothings of doubt. Emma's heart raced, yet she felt an unexpected calm settle over her nerves. She had navigated chaos before. You won't know until you try. And even if you stumble, each failure is a lesson, a stepping stone. Think of it as the parts of a machine. They don't always fit perfectly at first. Her own words ignited a flame of determination within her, a reminder of her resilience in a world that often felt chaotic. The sirens grew louder, and Emma's focus sharpened. She tightly grasped the present moment, not allowing the external world to snatch away their chance. She envisioned the mechanics of this encounter, the gears interlocking smoothly as they adjusted to one another's movements, both needing each other to work in harmony. What was the last thing you repaired? She pressed gently, wanting to guide him deeper into this world that once brought him joy. A flicker of excitement crossed his features. My old motorcycle, it was a mess, but turning that key and feeling it roar back to life, it felt amazing. That's exactly it. Emma beamed, enthusiasm threading through her voice. The rush of making something work again, it's like breathing new life into not just an object, but yourself. That's where the magic happens. The tension in the room shifted as hope began to seep through the cracks of his uncertainty. The powerful realization emerged. He could redefine himself, and the mechanisms of change lay within his grasp. Emma knew this was pivotal. She had to push further. What do you need to get there? Skills? Guidance? Support? He was quiet for a beat, then murmured, I do need training, somewhere to practice. The reality of his situation loomed large again, but the embers of his initial spark refused to die out completely. Emma felt an urge to act, to channel the latent energy pooling around them. There are programs, local shops that train people in mechanics. I could help you look into it. Find out if they have scholarships or resources. The officer, still waiting in the background, processed the unfolding events, the atmosphere shifting from hostility to a shared quest for redemption. Years spent managing firm relations dissipated as he observed the contrast between Emma's nurturing energy and the man whom fate had ensnared. A desire to intervene dragged him back to his role of authority, yet he was tethered to the conversation unfolding. Emma faced the officer, a flicker of challenge in her expression. Can we find a way to ease this? If he can walk away from here, ready for a fresh start, that'd be a victory for all of us. There was no guarantee that the officer would respond positively. Policemen thrived on order, not the tumultuous unpredictability of growth and change. There was a moment of hesitation, as if the tension both menaced and offered them hope. Suddenly the robber's voice broke through, earnest but raw. I need to try, though I'm terrified. I don't want to drag anyone down with me anymore. Then let us ignite that fire, Emma exclaimed passionately. Burn away the past and create a powerful future instead. You deserve another chance, as do we all. Emma's resolve sparked something unshakable within her. This wasn't just a moment. It was the culmination of her own struggles and experiences woven together. For the first time in her life, she was more than a waitress. She was a catalyst of potential and empathy. As the siren's wail faded momentarily, Emma's mind surged ahead to the potential future filled with grease-stained hands and engines rumbling back to life. But deep down, a sense of urgency weaved through her plans. Would following through on this reckless gamble of empathy pay off, or would it obliterate both their futures? I can't promise that this path is easy, Emma pressed, her heart pounding as she faced them both. But will you let fear guide you, or will you step into the unknown? Time stretched in that office, the air thick with unspoken fears and the palpable promise of change. The footsteps of hope were muffled by a heavy silence, leaving only the echo of one stark question to be answered. Would he seize this fleeting opportunity, or would it slip away into the night? In the weeks following that harrowing night at the diner, Emma felt like a different person. The encounter with the robber reverberated through her life in ways she could never have imagined, shaping her into someone more attuned to the power of choice and resilience. She transformed her fear into a driving force, propelling her to confront the uncertainties that once paralyzed her. With each day at the diner, she embraced her role not as a mere waitress, but as a beacon of connection. Regular patrons who walked in had been taking notice of her elevated confidence, which now radiated from her every movement. She no longer felt tethered by the weight of her father's illness. Instead, she had become a support system for both him and herself. Emma enrolled in classes on mental health advocacy, determined to turn her learned experiences into something meaningful. She discovered a passion within her that ignited a fire, helping others navigate their own storms of despair. Each new principle she absorbed helped her cultivate skills she'd once thought irrelevant. She recognized that empathy and wisdom are not just inherent traits, but rather cultivated through lived experience. Meanwhile, the former robber, whom Emma learned was named Dylan, became an integral part of her journey. Through the support of local resources identified by Emma, she stood by him as he began his training as a mechanic. Their shared determination carved out a space for healing, a tangible testament to leaving darkness behind and constructing a brighter future. Together, they forged a partnership built on mutual empowerment, where the act of rebuilding engines became symbolic of their own renewed identities. Weeks turned into months, and Emma began gaining momentum. Not long after, she was invited to share her story at local community workshops and advocacy groups. Each opportunity allowed her to extend that same lifeline she once offered in desperation. Only now, her message was underlined by a newfound authority. She had conquered her fears and was teaching others to do the same. One day, as she climbed onto a modest platform at a community center, a flicker of nerves fluttered in her stomach. But they were met with overwhelming confidence, grounded in her journey of transformation. She spoke about vulnerability as a strength, sharing her experience with Dylan as a metaphor for the importance of reaching out into the unknown. As faces in the audience became reflective and attentive, Emma felt recognized not only as a survivor, but as an advocate and leader. After the workshop, a local journalist approached her, interested in writing a feature. Emma found herself the subject of admiration rather than pity. Her story resonated as inspiring, a prime example of taking life's challenges to construct a legacy, demonstrating the significance of human connection and the courage to be vulnerable in pursuit of growth. As the article circulated in the following weeks, Emma's sphere widened. She received invitations to speak at different venues, landing an opportunity to collaborate with advocacy organizations. Each engagement validated her journey, allowing newfound confidence to solidify her role as a leader in her community. Reflecting on that critical moment in the diner now felt distant, yet each recounting of those events sparked the truth of her transformation. The timid waitress had evolved into an empowered advocate. The clouds that once hovered heavily above her head now brightened like the morning sun, illuminating a new day. Through recognition and engagement, Emma cultivated her pathway, shaping it not only for herself, but for those like her who grappled with doubts and fears, yearning for connection. With each person who contacted her, shared their struggles, and embraced the resources she directed them toward, Emma solidified her position. This was no longer just about survival. It was about contributing to the narrative of others, reclaiming lives shattered by fear. Ultimately, Emma established a small nonprofit organization devoted to mental health support and advocacy, creating a platform where support and resources could be all accessible. The desire to help others redefine their stories and transform their lives became her new purpose, a personal achievement birthed from chaos. I end this rich tapestry of growth. What remained clear was Emma's evolution from a hesitant waitress to a passionate advocate, transformed by the very act of confronting her fears. She proved, undoubtedly, that vulnerability could channel strength not just for oneself, but for an entire community yearning for solace within turmoil. And while reflecting on the journey may stir emotions, it reinforced one undeniable truth. When individuals stand together amid their storms, the very horizon becomes illuminated with undeniable hope. Take charge of your story. Subscribe immediately to our channel so you won't miss the next exclusive emotional stories that inspire change and resilience. Leave a like now to help fuel our reach. Your support genuinely matters. Share your reactions and thoughts in the comments. Don't hold back. And don't wait even one more second to share this empowering video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to show your support for more powerful, personal, overcoming stories.